My hands stable, I feel able to turn the tables, I could do this. Just keep moving, keep your hands up, stupid. I feel lucid, a new viewing. I can see the end, I can see my future, I can view it. It's right there for the taking. Everything I've ever wanted, dreams are just waiting. I just gotta fight for it, willing to die for it, willing to like sort of.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000, it still sucks. This is Philip J. Price, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show, your one-stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. Welcome back, y'all, to the Drunk Turkey Show. I'm Daniel, and alongside with me is no one, just me, myself. Big Blue and Jaime are off together right now. Jaime had a skin tag issue. Blue is taking care of for him. They should be back on Monday if all goes well. I want to say hello and sorry we're late. That's kind of all my fault. I had a late running or meeting deal that went a little bit later than expected. But here I am. We're going to be doing just a little bit of a Q&A show, answering your questions. If you guys want to join the live show, I'll put in the link, and I'm probably going to end up reading some comments and answering some questions from some of our comments that we've had. Hey, what's going? How's it going, everybody? How's it going? Yeah, the guys, Blue's at work, and Jaime has some stuff he has to take care of, so it'll just be me, myself, and I today. Let me put up my banner and make sure that I got everything going. Make sure I put up the right one. I almost put up the one from my other show. All right. Let's see. Nothing in particular that we're going to be talking about, so to speak. You know it, my man. You know it. Let's see. Now, may I ask again, is this the guys doing opening song? I like it, but have no idea. No, that is not our opening. That's not us doing the opening song. My StreamYard, it's been acting up, y'all. For some reason, I'm stuck on. There you go. Now it's going. Let's go. Let's get that up. We got 77 folks in here. Let's get those likes up, get into the algorithm, get this thing going. We had another show planned up, but I ended up having to be running late. And so we ended up not being able to go on about that. And I haven't done enough research on it to cover it properly. So we'll be probably talking about that maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday. But I know on Wednesday we're going to have Sleuth Intuition on the show. He was the creator who was talking with, or who interviewed, Patrick Westfall in the Delphi murder case of Libby and Abby. Richard Allen is the alleged killer in that double homicide, who has been arrested and charged. And we are awaiting trial while a whole sorts of craziness is going on in there. And what do you call it? So we'll be talking about that. We'll talk about the his interview with Patrick Westfall and get his perspective and whatnot on the Delphi case as well. But let me I'm going to share the stream. That way, if anybody's interested in jumping on in and just having a conversation, we can do that. Now, when you do come in, you're going to have to show your camera so I can see who you are, unless I know who you are. And yeah, I see all those drinks already. And you don't have to have your camera on afterwards, but just so I can make sure you're not trying to show anybody any Vienna sausages or anything like that. Here it is. Should be pinned in the comment section already. Good. So let me what was I gonna do? Oh, we already got somebody in trying to join. I'm gonna wait for this to air up. Oh, no sausage here. It's Jaime. How's it going, my man?
Am I muted? I'm not muted, right?
Yeah. No, you're not muted, my man. You're good to go.
Awesome. I got that taken care of. We're good.
You good? You good? Awesome, man. I was hoping I wasn't going to be up here by myself. That's awesome. I was gonna pull up some comments and some questions that we've had. All right, let me go to our content. I'm just gonna actually pull up the comments that are coming through, and let's see. Let's go look at our last live. Let's see what people are. I mean, our last video. This is the one where we kind of put a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Clickbaity title, where it put at supposedly defense claims that Bryan Kohberger was allegedly at the house at a party. But it was basically us just reading that New York Post article. Let's see what kind of comments in this. How about those lions? What? I don't know about that. Oh, hey, by the way, guys, in the near future, it appears that, I'm still waiting on confirmation, but I've been talking with Kaylee Goncalves, and it looks like we're going to have Kaylee and Steve Goncalves possibly on the show here in the near future to do an interview, actual interview with them. So it's going to be different than last time, that when, it was just a phone conversation that I had with her. And if you guys have any questions, email them to us. And, if they're appropriate, we'll put it that way.
Yeah. We gotta go through all of those. Make sure that they're PG-13, right?
Yeah, that, and also not offensive to to the victim's family, or anybody else. But yeah, that's going to be happening here pretty soon. I spoke with her today about it, and I'm just waiting confirmation on things, and we'll be able to put that up on Wednesday. We're going to have a sleuth from Sleuth Intuition on. He, as I was mentioning before, he's the guy the creator that interviewed Patrick Westphal from Delphi. So let's go through this. And nobody, if you have a question, put a couple of stars next to it. That way we can see it, or hit us with a super chat. That definitely catches our eye. The different color. Big Blue is typically the guy that is pulling out the questions and stuff from the live chat. So bear with us. The Angel D goes, question: what does everyone think Daniel's burner account is called? That's a good one. That is a good one.
I have a good guess, but I'm not gonna say it.
I'm going to answer this question with a question. Which one?
Jesus. He can be anyone
and everyone. I might even be in this live chat as well.
You are Angel D. You're just asking yourself questions.
Yeah. Let's see. I noticed that a few content creators are leaning towards the frat brothers of Ethan and the fight at a frat party as suspects. Why do you think that is? That's a great question, Laura. So apparently there was I guess some rumors that had gone through, and apparently I think that even Xana's mom may have even confirmed them, that there was some sort of altercation between Ethan and one of the other fraternity brothers while he was at that party that night, right? And I don't know how true it is or what extent it was or any of those things, but they're thinking just because of that, and maybe perhaps the context of that argument. I think the rumor was that one of them was on steroids, is what the rumor is, and that they got into a fight over that. So with that being said, let's think about that. They were at a party, right, Jaime? What do you think? What do you think is being done at a party Saturday night? Yeah. Well, okay. I had a cough, but it's all right. I'm giving you the opportunity.
No, because my mute button takes forever. A Friday night party. What isn't going on?
Right.
I mean, I remember back in the day, we were burning couches just to keep warm outside in the bonfire. And then when you mix alcohol and maybe some drugs, you're asking for some trouble.
Yeah, but I mean, if there's alcohol there, right? So, at the very least, right? That's what we can probably assume is going on. Anything else would be, well, even the alcohol could be pure speculation. I mean, it's pure speculation. The likelihood that they were drinking alcohol there, more than likely, But is it possible that they weren't? Yeah, I wasn't there. You weren't there. Yeah. Unless somebody comes forward talking about it, but. I'm sure that's going to be on the toxology report for Ethan and Xana that if they had, alcohol in their system. Well, anywho, the problem with the frat boy theory for me is it only answers one question, right? The possible why. And I think some folks are getting a little bit too narrow focused on this question. So because it's a frat boy and because there was supposedly some sort of altercation there, that says, all right, that's why this occurred. But it doesn't really fit the rest of the bill. I mean, maybe opportunity, it happened late at night, they're close by. So yeah, those two kind of check off. But what about the means? And what the means is are they capable of committing this crime? And it's more than just the physical ability of how this person can commit a crime. It is, the having information, the education, the smarts, the know-how, the experience, and the sobriety in this situation. What do we know about this case? We know that law enforcement used DNA from a knife sheath. They didn't use DNA underneath the fingernails or DNA found on the bodies or any of those things. I mean, why do you suppose that they didn't use DNA under the fingernails or blood that may have been cut on somebody and the assailant and it dripped on the victim? Why didn't they use that DNA?
So I don't think they found any. I know they bagged their whenever a crime like this happens, they usually bag their hands to make sure they can contain that DNA if they have any under the fingernails. But if they didn't find anything on there, then what can they compare it to, right?
Exactly. They didn't find anything. Had they found it, then law enforcement would have used that DNA because that's more of an indication of the perpetrator because it's from a defensive wounds on a victim, from a defensive wound on a victim by having those skin cells in said fingernails or whatnot. So the mere fact that they're comparing it to the DNA on the knife sheath alone tells us that whoever committed this crime, if we were to take the sheath out, didn't leave any DNA behind, didn't leave any evidence behind. Now, does that seem like a plausible answer to an equation where you have alcohol, rage, and a rage-filled murder? I don't think so. Those things aren't well planned out or any of those things. What are your thoughts, Hyman?
No, yeah, man. If you have alcohol in your system, depending how much, right? But if you commit a crime like this on alcohol and you're just with anger, I don't think you'll be thinking about not leaving DNA behind. Especially like maybe with one person, one victim, maybe it could happen, right?
Yeah.
But 4 victims in different stories, in the second story and the third story. I don't think that would be the case if it was just another frat person,
Yeah, exactly. And there's no planning involved in that. What's up, Anthony? How you doing, my man? There's no planning involved in that. That's out of rage, out of anger, the whole 9 yards. So, when those things happen, you're usually finding forced entry. You're finding a door kicked in. You're finding glass broken. Somebody's angry. They're not typically tiptoeing in the dark trying to get to a place. They're like, you mother effer, come over here. And, it's on. You get what I'm saying? So that theory there, it just doesn't make sense unless you're narrowly focusing on that as being, that answers that one question. It unfortunately doesn't answer all the questions. And when you look at these different types of theories, it's always good to kind of take a step back and look at it from a distance and look at the big picture instead of narrowly focusing on a window where it answers one of your questions, but it doesn't fit the totality of the problem, if that makes sense. Let's see.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from the looks of it, it seems like there was a lot of planning done to commit this crime, these murders. I don't think like a frat, like even if he got in a fight with a frat guy, I think it would have been either settled there or a little bit right after, right? It wouldn't. I don't think he will take the time to go home, get tools, or pretty much make his own little kill kit, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And it will
exactly.
I feel like it will be just towards that person he has the problem with, not just the other victims. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. Gina asked, did we ask Ms. Goncalves about the jacket? That's one of the questions that I have listed down. Like I said, we're gonna have, and if you're just tuning in, we've been in conversation with Ms. Goncalves. We're planning on having her and Steve on the show. We're just confirming a couple things right now. And once we get everything confirmed, we'll probably set it up for a couple of days after that, just to kind of promote the interview, and then we'll put it out there. But yeah, we have a list of questions that we're going to be going through to just kind of clear up some of the confusion, some of the misunderstandings. Like one of the questions, which I've already asked her, but we're going to ask her again just so that it's coming from her, not just from me. You know what I'm saying? And that is, there was rumors that Olivia had seen, I guess, some sort of camera footage of Kaylee and Maddie walking the dog after they came back from the corner club. And she confirmed that those are 100% false. That did not happen. There is no camera footage that shows that. And what people misheard was what she actually said, Olivia, is that she would have thought that Kaylee and Maddie would have taken Murphy out when they got home. Not that she saw Kaylee and Maddie take home, or when they got home, take out Murphy. So, but yeah, the jacket is one. We're going to ask about that. Let's see. Cecil Hotel says, why do you think the motorcycle cover was seized from RA's house during the search? Why do you think that, Jaime? Why would a motorcycle cover be taken during the search?
Maybe because they couldn't put his other vehicle there.
Maybe. Do you think
even though they said that there was a vehicle that looked similar to his, right, at the time?
Yeah.
But they couldn't confirm that at all, right? And plus, he put himself there. So, where was his vehicle when he supposedly was there?
That's true. Now,
maybe that's why they took it in as evidence to see if it holds any possible DNA on it.
It's possible. I think they may have taken it because, hear me out now. They said there was some drag marks, right? But Snay said that he couldn't see any drag marks in the picture, right? What if, now, remember, in the Richard Allen case, he's driving on 300 North, heading westbound towards the old CPS building, and that's where they catch him on camera. To me, it doesn't make sense why he's going that way unless for two reasons. All right, one is he's passing by Abby's house, because Abby's house is on the way over there. Or two, three reasons. Two, he was trolling somewhere else, and maybe another, trail or something, looking for another victim. and these, Libby and Abby were just 100% random, which I doubt. Or 3, he was parked at the cemetery, right? And he had brought some stuff with him, right? Because the plan was always going to be he was going to take the life there. So he went and he dropped some tools off, which is why he's hauling back, going that direction to get back to the front of the trail, right? Because he can't walk through the water and go back up to get up that bridge. That'll look weird if he gets up there looking wet. So he has to drive out and drive back in front. And then so he hauls tail. Maybe one of the things that he had with him was like a tarp, and he used it to drag the bodies around. I think that if
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to think. I'm going to ask you this. I wonder if a tarp would make a different dragging mark than just the body itself.
Yeah, or I mean, he can also use it to sit on. If he was wet and had probably blood, you know what I mean? He could have put it on his seat too. He could have sat on that.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
That's a good question, though.
Yeah, thank you, Cecil Hotel, for that. Let's see. Myron asked, my only question is, do you think the investigation was rushed? And I'm assuming this is back to Kohberger. What do you think, Jaime? Do you think they rushed the investigation?
Well, that has to be Kohberger because the other one took 5 years, right?
Well, yeah, yes and no. It took him 5 years to arrest him, but it only took him, maybe 6 weeks after they got his name to put him in cuffs? Or after they realized his name? Maybe not even that. I think maybe just a month. But I don't know. I don't think. But let's just say it's Kohberger.
I mean, I don't think. I think the fact that it was 4 victims, right? I think the fact that was the case that there's a lot of other college students around, and that they had someone that's out there, murdering people. I think that was going to be the point of catching them as fast as you can. But at the same time, it kind of like seems like sometimes they do. No, not just in this case, but any other case. If you go try to push it too fast, you miss things, right? And you have to go back and then check out different evidence that they left behind or they didn't even notice in the first place. So I guess it has pros and cons, I mean, obviously the pros, like they have someone in custody, but the cons, it could be they rushed it too fast and they could miss some evidence in the beginning of the case.
For me, as far as did they rush it? For me, it's not so much about, whether or not they did it too fast. It's about, do you have enough evidence to arrest? There's no time limit or time frame in which an investigation has to be completed. Some take longer than others because, some take more evidence than others, right? So like if you're trying to do some sort of like drug bust on somebody and you're trying to get like a huge distribution case going, well, that takes more than just one arrest and, you flying into a warehouse somewhere and finding a bunch of drugs. That just tells you that with those drugs right there, that there was a possible intent to distribute. And, honestly, trying to prove intent is difficult. I mean, you're going to have the evidence there, but when it gets down to going to, a jury, it can get kind of iffy. That's why a lot of times those type of cases get charged real high in hopes that people plead down, right? So that way they don't have to go to court and risk anything. So anyways, what you end up doing and try to get something bigger than that is you build a case. You watch, this place, you see shipments coming in and out, and you try to get somebody maybe even potentially undercover. And the goal is to get a history of long-term, distribution. So that way, when you do make your arrest, it's with a huge case and it's loaded and, solid. You won't have to worry about anything. But when it comes to a crime where, like, for instance, somebody having their life taken away, the evidence is all there. It's not something like, all right, let's wait till this guy hits again so we can charge him for being a serial killer. No, they actually want to kind of put that to a stop as soon as possible. And did they rush it per se? Could they have gotten more evidence? I mean, the only more evidence that they could have gotten was, the weapon and the tools of the crime, the, planning tools. And those couldn't have been gotten unless they checked his apartment, his car, and his house at his parents' house. Those places had to be checked. So, you had to arrest him, in that situation. So putting that all together, no, I don't think they did rush it. I think that they were anticipating on finding more evidence, maybe, perhaps, and maybe they have. We don't know. But from the sounds of it, it sounds like this guy is pretty intelligent, and maybe this is going to be a difficult case. It's going to be, I think there's enough evidence there. I think they got a strong case, but I mean, who knows at this point? We don't know all of it. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts on that last part?
Yeah, I think the fact that it looked rushed, kind of, for me, it feels like you said, that they had enough to hold him, and then they were gonna, get more on him, more evidence on him, make him more solid. And that's why sometimes, like, when these cases, like, get not solved, but like they have a suspect in custody so fast, a lot of people rush to think that, oh, they're just the first suspect that they come out, they're gonna grab him and they're gonna just try to, like, force the story around, the narrative around him. And that's probably not the case on this one. I think they have enough evidence on him to keep him.
I mean, let's be honest here. What is the defense? What's his defense so far? Some rule from 1880, and they want to include evidence that's not usable against him that points to him, right? Like, and I've said this a couple of times. That's like as if I commit a crime, I say I'm innocent, and you find my DNA there, and then I say I'll take a lie detector test, or scratch the DNA part, but I go out, I'll take a lie detector test, and then I fail it, and for whatever reason, they find more evidence, they end up charging me, and my only defense is, well, let's go get that failed lie detector test that I had and try to somehow use that as evidence of corruption. It doesn't make any sense to me. Angel D asks, people are still on, what did you say to Adam when Steve said way at the start it was about getting back with Jack D allegedly? I think that's true. From everything that I've heard, that sounds accurate. What do you think it could be, or what it is, Jaime?
I think it's gonna be probably that, since it was the breakup was pretty fresh at that time. I think that's gonna be it. I mean, I don't know. I know there's a lot of rumors about drugs and stuff like that, but I think that's just gonna be it, man. That they're just trying to, maybe get back together at that time, especially because it was so fresh.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And Jack and Adam were good friends, right? If one of them was having relationship problems, don't you think that they would tell the other one? You know what I mean? And if like, for instance, if Blue came up to us, right. If Blue came up to you or I and was like, I don't know, he was like, hey man, him and his girlfriend, him and his girlfriend don't work out, right? Mm-hmm. And Blue's heartbroken about it, right? He's all, He's all heartbroken because Blue has a big heart. So, he comes up to us at the bar one night, and he's like, "Hey, things are going well. He wants to get back with her. He wants to work it out. We're bros of his, so we're encouraging that that could work out." And let's just say Blue leaves, and we're at the bar. Blue's there. His ex-girlfriend shows up. They're hanging out. Blue leaves because he's tired, and she tells us something like, "Yeah, I want to get back with him." Right? Would you or I tell Blue that, or will we keep that a secret?
I snitch a lot, so
I snitch a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we would tell him, like, "Hey, man, it's looking good for you. Just keep doing what you're doing."
Especially like, they all know each other, and that, I mean, they're gonna talk, and if you hear something from her, you're obviously gonna go tell your buddy, maybe not the bad, maybe not so much the bad things, but maybe the good things.
One or two, one or the other, maybe even both. I'm just thinking that, maybe I understand why it was suspicious. I mean, anything that those girls did that night, knowing what happened the next day, was going to be suspicious. And there's no fault in looking into those things. You know what I'm saying? I mean, us ourselves did. But, once time started to continually go, right, where there wasn't an arrest in this case, and the longer it got away from that situation, the less likely it was that. And the reason I'm saying that is because, like, Adam, Jack, they all were very cooperative. Now, it'd be a different thing if they came out, they were uncooperative, right? But they were cooperative. They handed their phone over. Both of them handed their phones over. The whole 9 yards. If there was something to be found because of their cooperation, it would have been found. You know what I mean? Angel D comes in saying, "But why are some people really, really not wanting it to be Kohberger? I don't understand why the way they caught him is so unbelievable that they want it to be the frat boys." Well, let's take this one part at a time. Well, let's take the frat boys out of it because we already spoke about them. What it does really come down to is, are there some people who just want it not to be Kohberger, or no matter what, it could be anybody else but Kohberger? Do you think that that's something that's going on right now, Xana?
Well, I mean, take a look at us. Even from the beginning, we always had that open mindset on who could have been, right? We went through a couple of avenues, and then some of the evidence and some of the information started coming out that finally started making sense and pointing to the right direction. At least for me,
Yeah.
And I mean, this evidence information kind of just points towards Bryan's way. So, like, for me, it's just hard. I was up in different percentages through a whole, like, since the last year. I was like 50-50, could have not been, and a little bit more information will come out. Okay, it's now 60-40, it is him, and then 70. Now I'm up to like 90s that, more than likely they got the right guy.
Right. Oh, I hate when that happens. So no, I hear you with that. But what I'm saying is, there are some people that no matter what evidence comes to you, there's some sort of excuse behind it. And, some of it is bizarre, up to the point where I've heard, some folks accuse the chief of police of being involved in this crime. I've heard, there was a lot of people that have supposedly had inside information about this crime, and the majority of it has been probably, I'd say like 80% of it's probably been false. It's been about 20% that came out to be true.
It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like Reddit.
Right. but like the part that came out to be true was that somebody saw, somebody in the house. You and I couldn't believe that was true because of the how long it took for somebody to pick up the phone and call 911.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a huge hurdle for the prosecution, when it comes down to this case. Just because I think he did it, doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy open shut case. There's no such thing. You never know how one person might perceive the evidence. I mean, we go through the evidence, we perceive it one way, and there's a few people, if not a lot of people, that perceive it differently. And I think it's pretty clear it's him, but it's not clear to everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a guilty person who committed a crime can't get off on technicality, right?
A guilty person can get off on a technicality.
Yeah, I mean, even if one,
well, yeah,
well, even if one, not a technicality, but like even the one juror, that's all it takes, pretty much.
Yeah, well, O.J. Simpson, Casey Anthony.
Well, O.J., that was a different story, man.
You think he was innocent too?
No, I think he was guilty as it comes, man. But
okay.
I think the whole Rodney King thing was a whole full display too. So I don't think they wanted, I think that was a big reason too as why he wasn't convicted.
That's true too.
At least in my opinion.
Right, and I can say that's. I can agree with you. Me personally, say that's possibly had something to do with it. There was a lot of rioting that was going on back in that time frame. In the mid '90s, and I'm sure that possibly played a role in it. But Casey Anthony, that was a person that a lot of folks thought she was, pretty much the person.
Even the special or the documentary that came out, it was like, whoa, wow. But yeah, she was like at some point she was just like debunking herself.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
I think she was even saying, I'm pretty sure she did it. You're talking about yourself. Oh man, good times. But yeah, dude, when we watched that documentary, it was like, are you serious? This person is lying through her teeth, and she's even telling you she's lying. She said it, I don't know how many times, like, I'm a pathological liar. I've lied about everything, but I want you to believe me now. Right now, out of oh my gosh. All right, Doors of Perception says, why doesn't anyone think that Bryan did a killing before, and that's why they had him so fast? They didn't have him that fast. It took them about a month and about 5 days or so.
Let's give it like a month and 2 weeks just to make sure.
Yeah, from November 13th to December 19th is when they got him. And the way they got him was through the IgG family tree thing. Like, what they were able to do is they got the DNA on the sheet, they created that STR profile, and there they created an SNP profile, sent that out, or a lab created the SNP profile. And what their goal was try to do a family tree or build a family tree based off of the DNA that they had. So what they would do is they would take that DNA and enter it into like 23andMe or whatever under a pseudonym like John Doe or whatever. And that name would then, they would get some relatives. And then depending on how far the relative is back, like whoever did it, will determine probably the level of difficulty that tree is going to be or how long it's going to take. So for instance, if like one of Bryan Kohberger's sisters, if she had done one of these, ancestry type Jed match or whatever it's called. If she had done one of those, then it'd be fairly easy to trace back to Kohberger fairly quickly. Now, if it was like a fifth cousin 3 times removed or something like that, well, that's going to be a little bit harder. You know what I mean? It might take a little bit longer. We don't know who it matched to. I'm assuming maybe that's why Kohberger's defense wants it, because they want to know how close it was, but I don't think it matters because, well, Jaime, do you know how they check the accuracy of the genealogy tree or the genetic tree makeup thing that they did? You know how they make sure, you know what tells them whether or not they did it right or wrong?
Dude, you asked the wrong person, I'll tell you that. If Blue was here, that would have been a different story.
Well, the way you tell, right. So the way you tell if something's right or wrong, you have to have some, for a test, right? You have, the answer to the test, so to speak, right? Like if you have, well, anyways, the answer to this test is the STR match. So if you go and take your suspect's DNA and it matches to the DNA that you were testing to, then that means you did the IgG correct. If you go and test it and it doesn't match, or it's an incomplete match, like for instance, it says, oh, hey, this person has like 8% of the same DNA or whatever. So that's like some kind of very close cousin, like first cousin or whatever. That means you did it wrong. You're probably on the right path, but you did it wrong. So it's another reason why it just doesn't make any sense to me why the defense is fighting for this so hard, unless they really have nothing else to argue. Sadie asks, I think Bethany seeing a naked man confirms BK stripped down, and that's why BK didn't transfer any blood. It's possible. That story came from somewhere. Yeah. Do you think that's what it is?
I don't think so. I think he probably wore clothes underneath, whatever getup he had, to not get any sort of blood. I believe that all that stuff that he used is no longer anywhere remotely close to that house. I'll tell you that. I'm sure it's buried or thrown in some body of water. But from the looks of it, it looks like I think he buried it, thinking that he might get away and come back for it later.
Oh, I think it's buried, burnt, ashed. Those things are buried. As far as Bethany seeing a naked man, I don't think she saw a naked man, and the reason being is Bethany's room faces, was it Queen Street? I know they live on King, but the road that it's actually facing is Queen, which is why it's a little confusing there. But it faces that street. It doesn't face behind the house. Dylan's bedroom, however, would have a pretty good view of the back of the house. All right. So maybe perhaps it was Dylan who saw that. Somebody outside without clothes. Where do you think that it would have been logical for him to have stripped down, Jaime? Do you think that's right after he walks out of the house, before he walks out of the house, or when he gets to his car, a couple of feet away from his trunk? Where do you think he's taking off his clothes at so that he doesn't get caught?
I mean, the best place will be right outside the house. That way you don't track any DNA of the direction you're going, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the thing is, like, the neighbor's pretty close too, and I'm sure the lights were on from the back where the sliding door was at, by the kitchen. Maybe behind that, around the corner towards the, how that slope, where that slope is at. Maybe that would have been a good place.
You know where I think it was?
What's up? In that corner?
No, I think it was actually in the kitchen. Right
Inside?
Before he walked out. Yeah, right before he walked out. Reason being is What do we know? We know that Kaylee and Maddie were in the same bed on the third floor. We know that Ethan and Xana were in the same room. And yet there's blood, supposedly, allegedly. I mean, there's something red on some of the cabinets inside of the kitchen. Not a lot of blood. And it's so small, like it's just a couple of drops here and there, that I would think that perhaps somebody went in there, which, well, I don't think that Dylan or Bethany ever really left their bedrooms. You know, I think if maybe perhaps if one of them did, they went to the other bedroom. I don't think that they went around the house and searched it. Reason being was because the rear sliding glass door was still open when the person that called 911 arrived. All right. So it's been theorized, also by myself, that the assailant went in through the back sliding glass door, opened that glass door once, and that was the last time that person touched it. They didn't close it behind them. They didn't open it and then close it or any of those things. So I'm thinking that if he's covered in, if this person has blood on their arms, which I would assume that they would based on where they were attacking the victims, and they were to take these items off and swing, the arm, then that would throw off any blood and cascade it onto the shelves there. You get what I'm saying? I think that's how that got there. I think I figured it out.
Maybe.
I'm probably wrong.
Could be, man. At this point with this case, it's anybody's guess.
Yeah. I was watching the interview between Brian Enton and the Goncalves family, and in that interview, they were what was it? Brian, they asked Steve about knocking down the house, and he was talking about the perspective of being outside of the house. Like if you were stalking the house and you were watching, and you can pinpoint where he was at by his phone. Like let's just say it was back there, behind the house. Like what could you see from there? If the windows were open, how much into the house could you see? If you knock down the house, you lose that perspective. You know what I'm saying? And do you think that knowing that perspective is important to the jury?
I think everything should be taken serious when it comes down to showing the jury exactly where everything's supposed to be. It's one thing showing them pictures or even a model, but physically seeing it, it's a whole different story.
Yeah. Thank you, Sissy, for gifting a Drunk Turkey membership. If you guys don't have your memberships turned on, hit the join button, and then it's going to go to the membership page, and then there's going to be 3 dots. Hit that, and then it'll say gift memberships. Just turn those on, and you'll be able to claim some of these memberships. We appreciate you. Let's see. I'm going to go through some of these a little quick. Snay, good to see you, Peyton. I'm glad Klein is involved. Do you think he and Klein is involved in the Delphi case there, Jaime?
Like physically involved?
Yeah, like do you think he had, or do you think he's involved with Richard Allen? Do you think there's a connection there?
There could be. I mean, it's a small town, right? If Richard Allen's being accused of committing these crimes, and then Klein's accused of, the kiddie stuff, or at least catfishing young girls.
Yeah,
I think there has to be something there. I kind of feel like the information was sold or given to Richard Allen from Klein.
I think so too. But the one thing that does bother me is that they haven't found anything connecting him electronically. Unless he was one of the two guys that was with Elvis Fields, and one of the other guys is who had the communication. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Sissy asks, do you think he first saw the girls at the restaurant Maddie and Xana worked at, and then just couldn't control himself and started stalking? What do you think, Jaime?
I think if any person who would kill 4 people, obviously they had these intentions a long time ago. They don't just wake up one morning and be like, oh, you know what? I feel like doing this. I think he might have seen them. I'm not saying there, but maybe from a dating app, maybe, and chose that person and then stalked. I'm sure he had stalked before, and he had thoughts about doing something similar to it. Maybe not as much as like 4 people, but at least one. And I'm sure he had thoughts about that way before this crime was committed.
Yeah, for me, I think I don't think it was the restaurant. I think it was at their house, and the reason being is, and it just kind of goes back to if this was Bryan Kohberger, who he is as far as his education, his knowledge, his intelligence. Why would he target this area or one of these persons? What was going on in his life during that time? Who was affecting him during that time? And, what we know is, he was struggling at the school, at the university. He was supposedly, being accused of having some disturbing behavior with another PhD student, constantly asking them out, and to the point where other PhD students just didn't want to leave him alone. And you had the Pullman Police Department basically turn him down as an intern. Now, he's smart, he's educated, he understands that, even though all his anger and frustrations may be towards WSU, Pullman Police Department, and females that attend WSU, that if he attacks or commits a crime like this towards somebody that he's connected to, that it could come back to him. So I think that he had the urge and the desire to commit something like this. I think that's why he was, conducting that Reddit survey in the manner that he was conducting it. Some of the questions that he was asking weren't really normal to something out of a thesis that you're expecting when it comes to the criminology and PhD classes. The reason why is because I can't remember who it was, but there was an interview with another PhD student, not part of this, but another criminology PhD student who was talking about those specific things that were in Kohberger's Reddit survey that even they said that was a little bit odd. I took criminology, but not at the PhD level, so I couldn't tell you. Plus, I didn't even finish the associate level, so I'm way below where Kohberger was at. But you'll get all those things. Plus, he had there was those text messages from his friend saying that he wanted to be associated with a high-profile crime. He wanted to be the detective. He wanted to solve a high-profile crime. And then there's a high-profile crime that gets committed. I think that was an aspect of what he wanted to accomplish. Not the entire thing, but a part of it. It being a high-profile crime, it going unsolved, and it targeting local rural law enforcement, local, the local universities, although it wasn't the one that he attended, and, sorority girls. So what I think he did was he went out and looked for a house with a lot of females in it because the goal was to have more than one victim, to create a higher profile crime. So that way there's more, obviously more attention to it. And given the fact that there needed to be more people, having a new Range Rover parked up front or a boyfriend's car out there maybe wouldn't bother him as much as we would think, because that's part of the plan, more people. So I think the house was targeted. And I think that's what they meant by the house being the target. Do you know if he had a polygraph? If you're talking about Bryan Kohberger, I do not think so. And if it's Richard Allen, I don't know. If it's Elvis Fields, don't know. I know Patrick Westfall did. He supposedly passed his. But those are the only ones that I know that have had polygraph. Why would the killer start upstairs knowing there are others in the house that could hear him? He would not know heading downstairs what he could face. I mean, when you walk into a house that you're not supposed to be in, you can walk into something as soon as you walk in. You know, the reason why he probably went upstairs first, in my opinion, it's probably because there was a light on in the second floor at one point, probably to alert the DoorDash driver of where the residence was. And I'm assuming that if he saw that light on at 3:51 when he passed by and off at 4:05 when he passed by again, you know, in that like 15-minute, 10-minute area, he's probably assuming that maybe they just fell asleep and they're not in that deep REM aspect of being asleep, unlike the folks that are upstairs in the fourth or in the third bedroom. So you could probably be able to get into their bedroom a little bit quieter versus the second floor. You know, just an opening, a difference in pressure if they're not completely asleep could wake them up. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. What do you think, Iman?
Yeah, seeing the light off in the third floor would have been just the first target, right? The first place to go. And then if he had seen that the second story light was so long, he would have given enough time for them to, at least the victims, to fall asleep and then go down there.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, I know you said you had to go soon. I don't know if you have to go. You can go ahead. I'm going to answer some of these.
All right, man. Y'all take care. Have a good night. I got to work tomorrow, so that's going to be fun. Wish me luck.
Good luck, my man. I'm going to answer the remaining questions that I have here. You know, I appreciate you jumping on. It was a pleasant surprise.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here
for. Well, thank you.
All right, man. You have a good night.
You too, buddy. Take it easy.
Whatnot.
You know what to do. Drink. Lucy asks, Daniel, if you looked at this case from a different angle, play devil's advocate and talk about the rooms not being controlled with one person being the unaliver. I mean, all right, so let's play devil's advocate here. Well, maybe not so much devil's advocate, but let's look at it from a big picture. What would need to happen if there were multiple people involved in here? So it would be not just one person going in there and committing the perfect crime while not leaving DNA, but now multiple people going in there committing the crime and not leaving DNA. As unlikely it is, and as hard as it is to believe that one person could do it, I feel that when you add more people to it, would further complicate that equation, which would make it thus more unlikely. So for anybody to say that it couldn't have been, you know, Bryan Kohberger for whatever reason, I think you can't say that it you know, oh, because of the DNA or there was only this DNA there. You really can't say that it was multiple people, because then where's all their DNA too? And I know that, you know, some folks are going to point to the defense said that there was 2 unidentified male source DNA, you know, in the area of where the bodies were found. So let's think about that too. There's another DNA source that was found as well. That was found in a glove outside of the house. Why was the defense team so precise about the location of the DNA outside of the house, indicating it was inside of a glove outside of the house, and not so, you know, direct as to where the DNA in the area where the bodies were located? Is it possible because that area was just the room, and maybe it's on the opposite side of the house, of the room, very far away, and maybe not really have anything to do with the crime? It's possible. I think that's probably more likely, because if it was on the bodies of one of the victims, just like, Ann Taylor put in about the DNA in the glove. It would say that, because, if I was a defense attorney, or like Richard Allen's defense attorneys, when you see something that doesn't look right, or that is like, hey, this is, possibly exculpatory, then you can jump on the table and sing about it, right? Well, I think she'd be singing about this, like, hey, there's blood, there's touch DNA on this part, on that part, but to say that it's in the area tells me that's the closest description that they could come with, that would still tell us that they're being truthful, right? Because if it was really close, they would say it. All right, my mouse ain't working. This says, oh my God, when she drove all the way to her work and walked in saying hi to everyone, yeah, I don't even work here. I'm not sure what that's about. Jaime started that. Kaylee's brother in an early interview said survivors were on the first floor in the morning, allegedly. I think when police arrived there, everybody was on the first floor out of the house. From what I understand is that when Ethan's best friend came over to the house, because he was summoned by the roommates, he opened the door partially. It took him some time because the door was blocked. He was able to peer in, see what he saw, and then he said, get out. Who he was telling, I'm not sure. And I think everybody did get out and 911 was called. So I would assume that when police did arrive there, that there would have been her or Dylan and Bethany outside in the front. Do you think they had rigor when they were found? Maybe. Let's see. If you're talking about Delphi, it was like the next day. Yeah, that's more of a Blue question. He's the medical guy. I know that it comes and goes and it varies. Like some people end up going into rigor like super early, like an hour into it, and then they'll be in rigor status for like a couple of hours, and then it'll go away, and then it'll come back again. And some folks, it takes them a lot longer, like 18 hours before rigor starts the first time. Is how long or how late I've seen it go in, or have heard of it taken. So that kind of depends. Dan, you don't have to explain, but is there any reason for Kaylee not been sleeping with Murphy that night? It's too weird for me. I'm curious if she was found under or over the blanket at the bed. And the reason why is probably because of Kaylee and Maddie got home super late. So I'm assuming, and then this is some other questions that I'm gonna ask the Goncalves family to get a better clarification. But from my understanding and my assumptions is the girls came back late, pretty close to 2 a.m. They had left at about 10:30, right? So they didn't leave early. They weren't out and about. They didn't go to the football game. They left about 10:30 to the corner club from their house. I'm assuming that, given the fact that they left so late, they probably took Murphy out before they left. He probably went to the bathroom, and they brought him in, and he went to sleep. At 10:30, most dogs are asleep by then. I've had a few in my life. I have a few now. And, when it gets dark, dogs get tired and go to sleep. So I'm assuming that if Kaylee was gone, that the dog would have slept in Kaylee's room, given the fact that they came home at 2 a.m. and, they probably went to Maddie's room. They were probably calling, or they were calling Jackie Core, doing girl things, and, calling boyfriends or whatever. And she probably left her dog asleep in her room. And the intention probably wasn't to fall asleep or to probably go to sleep there, but they've been friends since they were kids, so they feel like they're sisters. So they go to sleep in the same bed, and she just leaves Murphy asleep there. Now I find it not odd, but I think it would be more odd for somebody to go into their house or apartment or wherever they're staying at 2 a.m. to wake up their dog just to have them go and sleep on the floor in another room. Because, well, from what I understand, Maddie's bed wasn't a huge bed. So I don't know if Murphy and it would fit comfortably or whatnot. So I just think that there's a pretty good possibility that Murphy was just in his room the entire time. And it was just a lot of unplanned, unforeseen, innocent things that happened that night that ended up being him not being, with Kaylee when things went down. What is up, Jeff? Jeff comes in with a $5 super chat. I'm trying to put it on there, but this dang, what do you call it? StreamYard. It says, Daniel, do you hear a car trunk close at 4:21 a.m. and then a car taking off at 4:21 and 19 a.m. in the lane footage? I don't remember. I can go back and listen to it. I don't trust what's on the audio. Mainly being, I've heard that there's other audio that has been confirmed that's not out to the public. Because from what I understand, one of the victims' families has it, and that there's a lot of the noises in the Linda Lane footage that are absolutely not in that audio or that footage, which was right next to the victim's house. So I find it hard to trust any of it. But if there was, I find it difficult because I think that's out of the time frame. Wasn't the car scene at 4:20 on what was it? It was on the street south or just behind the victim's residence, I believe. But I'm going to have to go back and look at. I know you did some work on that, Jeff. If you don't mind sending me the link with it timestamped, I'll go back and listen to it. Let's see. Y'all can keep asking them. I'm just kind of slow at going through this. To not look at JD at the time as a suspect, I think was puzzling. He was a suspect. Kaylee and him were not the break. Parents were getting back together. Didn't make sense. Yeah, he was questioned heavily. I mean, maybe not so much considered a suspect or anything like that, but he was treated as one. And so was a lot of people in this case. That a lot of folks say that, oh man, they shouldn't have cleared him so quickly. This, that, and the third. I get it. But early on, he was questioned very heavily. In fact, so he was at the police department, I want to say almost at least 9-10 hours, somewhere around there, that first day. And then he was there over and over again. He was very cooperative. He showed no signs of injury or any of those things. And whatever information they had on his phone, from that forensic download and what they were able to corroborate, they were able to show that it wasn't him. Plus, he lived down the street. I don't understand why he would be driving around the house if he had some kind of involvement. Just wait at his house down the street until all lights turned off and run out that direction. And then where's the white Elantra if he had it and he was using it? Because at the end of the day, there was a white Elantra seen driving around several times, stop before the murders occurred, and then show back up, leaving that area at a high rate of speed after the murders. So, those things don't connect, in my opinion. And that's probably had a lot of reason why they didn't believe that it was him, plus a lot of other people that were in that area. Trace DNA in 8 hours. Yeah. Some things happen like that, I don't think so. Daniel, we are trying to get our head around him. He killed 4 people in an 8-hour delay in the night. Well, what do those two have in common or have to do with each other? You know, the actions of the surviving roommates. I mean, if they would have called 911 sooner, does that change who the suspect is? Does that change the white car driving around between 4 and 4:20? Does that change the DNA on the knife sheath? Would that change, his phone being off during that time? I don't think so. You know, is it suspicious? Is it questionable? You know, should there, be answers to it? Yeah, 100%, 100%. You know, but are we ready to accept that answer? If that answer is, there's fright, flight, and freeze, and this person did a combination. She just froze and didn't do anything, didn't know what to do, panicked, and being naive and young, just froze and was scared. So scared that, common sense went out the window. Those things are possible. We don't know what we would think or do in those type of stress situations. Let's see. You know what? I'm going to pull it up over here. This will be easier for me to read. All right. Where am I? Another channel has a theory that the perp ended M on the first pass of the car, left, realized that no, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, all right, so, and I understand that. I mean, one, yeah, that's another creator's theory, but this person would have to leave and go back, not leaving any DNA or footprints or any of those things multiple times, not just once. No. What somebody's trying to do in that is they're trying to make the Linda Lane audio make sense when there's audio that's closer that proves it doesn't make sense. Saw today a video about Allen Fucci. Judge said it was a senseless crime with no motive other than he wanted it. Mm-hmm. It was something he wanted to do for the thrill of it. Made me think. Yeah, there are some people that's the case. That's what they want to do. Let's see. Chat just jumped on me. BK drove BK. Yeah. Unless he meant a different BK. I hope both of them are Bryan Kohberger. Let's see. That would given you a frozen shock face, seeing the suspect naked. Yeah. It might be. And as far as him like getting dressed somewhere else, I think that the only logical place would be right before he leaves the house or right as he leaves the house. Just because, well, the reason why, it makes sense for me as he's leaving the house is because it would answer to why there was droplets or what appeared to be droplets of blood in the kitchen. Had he, obviously he committed this crime with a knife, so there would obviously be blood on his arm and chest. And if this was some sort of coveralls, you would unzip it, pull it off and over and take his arms out. That would fling, the arm sleeves back and forth. And if they were obviously soaked in blood, that would splatter and splash and cascade onto the walls. Let's see. They would have found blood where he parked if he had changed his clothes behind the house. I don't think he changed his clothes at the house. Too much time on target. And it depends. I mean, what do we know? He has those Vans, possibly those Vans shoes. and some coveralls. Those aren't very hard to get out, especially if he had some other van shoes next to him and some other very easily accessible pieces of clothing. So if he's walks out, unzips, has his bag open, puts the knife in there. I would assume at that point he probably realized that he lost the sheath, but put his knife in it, take his clothes off, put his clothes in there, and take off. He doesn't have time. He's the person saw him. He probably thinks that that there's probably they're probably calling 911. You know what I mean? Like, I would assume if I was him that, I saw somebody, they're probably calling 911, got to get out of here. I mean, he allegedly goes back at 9:30, knowing he can't search Idaho murders, quadruple homicide, Moscow, because if it hadn't been found yet and he searches that, he's gone. He's caught. Let's see. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Paul. Oh man, what part, Mitch? I'm not sure. I'm like super far behind. I have a friend that believed that the kitchen drippings were amino black. Any possibility? I honestly don't know. I've never used it before. I don't know what it looks like. I think it's a powder, but I don't know. We don't have official confusion that the sliding door was left open. The only official report was the front door. No, actually, that wasn't an official report that the front door was left open. That was a neighbor saying that the front door, or somebody saying that the front door was left open. It was brought to the attention of a news team. The news team brought it to the attention of Chief Fry, and he said that was not something he had heard before. And he had a press briefing not too long after the murders. I want to say maybe a day or 2 days afterwards, where he had stated that the back sliding glass door was still open when officers arrived. Now, the term "still open" when they arrived tells me that they probably felt that it was open the entire time. Steve is right. If I was the parent of one of them children, I would not want to purchase that house. What time did BK leave his place? I think it was sometime like around 2:42, 2:45 in the morning, somewhere around there. And he turned off his phone like at 2:47. He's seen on camera for 9 minutes over there by WCU campus. And then he's not seen any again until there's according to the PCA. Now, the PCA says that there's multiple footage of the car. Right. It doesn't say that the multiple footage was before, after, during the time that's specified that they're showing that vehicle on in the PCA. But they're talking about it, right? So they talk about it at 1:26 or at 3:26 a.m. that it's behind the police department. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the first time that it's on camera. It's just the first time that they speak about it in this essence. Like, it could have been seen on camera in multiple different places and multiple different times, trying to elude the investigation by driving weird patterns or something. But, when it goes to the house, when it starts to head that direction where they can see it the first time on camera, it's coming from the police department or from behind it. And then it's going straight there, and that's at 3:28, 3:29 when it passed around the first time. And then it passed by 1, 2, 3, 4 times, I want to say. And then again at 4:07, you can see it come back around and park. And so let's just say they parked at 4:07 and a half. It's not that far. It's like literally from a lot of folks. I don't know why they think that it takes like 10 minutes to drive around in a single apartment complex. It literally only takes 30 seconds to get around. So when it passes by right at 4:07, it's parking at before 4:08. So the guy's probably in the house by 4:09 and out of there at 4:19. So that's 10 minutes. That's a long time. You know, if anybody's been in a fight, 10 minutes is a long time. I mean, let's think about it as far as distance. If somebody's walking, you know, at 3 miles an hour for 10 minutes, what's that, like half a mile or so, maybe a little bit more? If somebody's jogging or sprinting, they can probably get to almost 2 miles, mile and a half in that time pretty easily. Yeah. Well, the house ain't that big. It's not a mile and a half long. Hey, Linda asked, how's the baby doing? You guys still cover? Thank you for covering the case still. Thank you. We appreciate that. Baby's growing. She's getting big. I'm on daddy duty during the day. It's I love the little girl. She's amazing. I love all my daughters, but my little baby, I get her throughout the day because my wife works. And she works from home, but when she's at work, I do dad duty. And yeah, we get to spend I spend a lot of time with her. She's my little mini me. She looks just like me. Don't tell my wife that though. She gets kind of mad. Did we find out who answered his Reddit post? No, I don't think so. I don't think we know. I'm sure law enforcement probably knows. He has more connections to Ellie than the 4 victims. Yeah. That's true. I think Golden State Killer probably also had more connections to law enforcement than his victims. BTK is another one too. I mean, I know it's shocking and it's surprising, but you know, I think at a certain point, or at least for me, I don't look at this guy as a guy that committed this crime because there was a specific motive outside of his own curiosity, fantasy, things like that. I don't think that this was a crime where, you know, of the I don't want to say traditional sense, but it wasn't a crime of passion or anger. There'd be a lot more evidence if it was. If there was no DNA on the button snap, do you think we'd never have heard of BK? Maybe. So my thing is, I think that because of his behavior at Washington State University, and you know, he was losing his job, he had just gotten fired. I think that at a certain point, information would have gotten to the police department, and it would have at Moscow and said, "Hey, there's this guy. He's been acting up. He got fired. He's got some, you know, disturbing behaviors. You might want to look into him." Now, can you use that at court against him? No. You know, you can't just say, you know, it's just some student saying, "Hey, this guy was grading hard," or "this guy did that," or whatever. It's not enough to go get a warrant. That's not enough to do anything. But you can investigate him, kind of like the IGG, right? That's not enough to go get a warrant for Kohberger just because you have it. That's not enough to go arrest him. That's not enough to go get a search warrant for his house. You got to build a case just like that. If somebody from WSU called and said, "Hey, you know, I want to remain anonymous, and just want to tell you that this guy, he's a bit of a douche, and he drives a white Elantra, and he grades people hard," just look into him. And if the police department just solely decided to look into him because of that, they would find out that he drives a white car very similar to the one that's being operated during the time of the commission of the crime. They would have found out that his phone wasn't connected to any tower during the commission of the crime. And they would have found his Reddit post because those were all already on, you know, those were public for anybody to find. And so was his education. They would have also have located his essay that he wrote to the Pullman Police Department, where he indicated that he wanted to help rural officers better analyze and collect technical data. Those things would have still been there. All right. They would have then used all those things to get a warrant to look at his actual phone locations and his actual phone history for the night of the murders, and would have found out that his phone was off during the commission of the crime. They would have also found out that his front license plate, his car didn't have one during the crime, which is also consistent with the vehicle that was seen on camera. And I think they would have tried their best to build a case against him without the DNA or a murder weapon. in that situation, it's going to be a little bit harder, without those two type of things. And in that situation, we're probably not seeing an arrest as fast as we're seeing it now, or as fast as we saw it. But, you're eventually going to pull his warrants and find out that he purchased a K-bar knife in April of 2022 prior to moving down to the Pullman, Washington area. These victims were stabbed by knives. At this point, if you don't have that key evidence, what you're probably doing is taking out the metal fragments out of the bodies of the victims and determining where those, depending on the material and how it was forged, you can determine where it was manufactured. So then you can tie it back to K-bar. You have the K-bar knife there. I think that's how you can probably tie it in, put it all together and put a bow on it. It's not as solid as this case without the DNA and the sheath there, but it would still be very solid and very circumstantial. But I think it'd be enough to probably convict him as well. It would have definitely taken a little bit longer, but it wouldn't have been as long as a lot of people think it would have been. I think it would have happened a lot sooner than what most people think, especially once he comes back from the Poconos. He's no longer a teacher's assistant. He's all mad and angry and offended by, his intelligence is offended by these rural officers and university out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, I think it would have been a little bit longer, but I'm pretty sure they would have got him. Myron, I don't get it. I don't understand why people think that it's dumb to drive your own car and think it's so smart to drive somebody else's. I've never seen that ever work. I have never seen it work. I've never seen where somebody stole another car to commit a crime. Now they got to get away with 2 crimes. Or if they used a rental vehicle or a vehicle they borrowed from a car dealership, well, there's pay patrol when it comes to those type of things. Or like a buddy. I mean, who's Kohberger going to go to? He's not from the area. He's, the only people that he probably associates or is around are the PhD students and the professors and those that he works with, because he's only been there for a couple of months. So is he going to ask another criminology student or professor to borrow their car and they're just not going to realize that their vehicle was lent out during, the night that a murder happened? And, given their education and their future goals as far as career fields go, that they're not going to report that? I don't know. Can somebody tell me what the benefit is of using somebody else's car? I mean, just the fact that this is, and again, this is another example of narrowing in and focusing in and being singularly focused on one part of a problem and saying, hey, they can't trace the car back to you if it doesn't belong to you, right? But not counting or thinking about the other problems that using somebody else's vehicle creates. Doesn't make sense. Oh, Angel D knew I was going to come in with that. Elvis's sister did pass a polygraph test. You baited him. That's why this is what happened. Why did Steve say he didn't have to go upstairs? Well, at the time, Steve and the family were indicating that there was only one, well, not only one, let me rephrase that there was one victim, or that the wounds didn't match, right? That it was speculated that the one person had more severe wounds than another, and that occurred up in the 3rd floor. A lot of people thought and assumed that the target was on the 3rd floor. If the killer enters in the 2nd floor and the target's on the 2nd floor, it doesn't have to go up to the 3rd floor. The fact that he went up to the 3rd floor at that time, from what I understood from what Steve was saying, and I was understanding what he was saying, and I was kind of thinking maybe the same thing as well. was, the only reason you go up there is if your target is up there, and coming down on the second floor, well, that's your exit point. Maybe somebody woke up, somebody heard something, somebody saw something, something like that. And like I said, this is early on in the investigation, but I still think that that's probably the case. Yeah, a killer is thinking all that. A very educated, well thought out, planned out one is thinking a lot of things. A lot of things. I mean, let's look at what Bryan Kohberger thought of. Why didn't he go directly back to Pullman? Even the police department indicated in the probable cause affidavit that they would have suspected that he was going to go back to Pullman immediately after. I mean, most people would. There's the adrenaline kicking in. You just committed a crime. You're trying to get away with it. You take off. You go fast to your home. But he didn't. He took this long ass route. Took over an hour and some odd minutes to get there. Maybe because he understood and knew that investigators were going to be looking at the Pullman cameras entering Pullman during a specific time, the time that they thought that would have been a time frame in which, if a person committed this crime, would have been entering that city then. And because of the sheer amount of tips and information and the evidence that they had to go through, they were only going to look at the specific time. So Kohberger drove an extra hour and a half out of his way so that he would elude that specific portion of the investigation. I'm pretty sure he would have thought about a lot of things. While he was driving around by UI, he could have heard music from the house and started checking it out. That's what I think happened initially. I can't remember who it was, but I was watching an interview here recently. I think it was Jeremy, the neighbor guy who was trying to be a lawyer. And what he had said was that this semester in particular, that the parties were a lot louder than the ones previously. And that that more people were showing up to that area than they were in the last couple of semesters or years that he was there. That ends up being the case. That would, if Kohberger is new to the area and it's just driving around, drives around where people are probably pointing. Maybe he asks somebody like, hey, where's the parties at? Where's the party scene? Back in Pullman. And they say, hey, if around here, it's this place, or you can go check out, the Greek Row. It's over there in Idaho or whatever. I mean, you probably find it on an internet search. It seems like it was a very popular spot. So there's a couple of different ways or reasons why he could have found that. Let's see. World Star, yeah. All right, sorry about that. Just checking some. Let's see. I'm gonna kind of scroll through these pretty quickly. Not at all. If multiple persons was a roommate or a boyfriend, that DNA was ruled out. Yeah. Right. I'm not sure what you're talking to. Maybe not to me. And if it was a roommate or multiple persons, if you're talking about the unidentified DNA, they wouldn't be unidentified. From my knowledge, a lot of people that were very close, nobody close to, well, people that I'm aware of that are close to it, they handed their DNA. I know that they took the cigarette butt from somebody secretly, but I don't know if that's because that person didn't want to hand over their DNA, or if they gave them the Kohberger treatment where they went and picked it up without him knowing it. Just like they did with Kohberger's parents' trash. They didn't go ask him for DNA or anything. They just went and picked it up. So they were trying to open the door themselves, then they would have saw the blood and should have called 911 at once. From my understanding is, I don't know who tried to open the door before Ethan's best friend. I don't think I didn't get any information about that. If anybody did, I just know that Ethan tried to open the door, or not Ethan, I'm sorry, that Ethan's best friend tried to open the door and couldn't open the door because he struggled with it. He had to push it. And then once he got it open a little bit, then that's when he saw bodies. So I don't know exactly which direction those bodies were facing or how they were positioned, if blood would have been traveling under the door or not. I'm not sure. But they should have called 911 at 4 a.m. I've never said that wasn't the case. It is what it happened. There's nothing that we can say or do that's going to change the fact that it took them 8 hours to call. And the fact that it took them 8 hours to call doesn't change who the suspect is. It just kind of complicates how they're going to find him. It makes it harder for law enforcement to find the guy because of that, but it doesn't change who the person is. Daniel, we know Bryan bought a K-bar from Amazon in April. Wouldn't that lead you to believe he was planning this back then? That would lead me to believe that he had the urges to commit a crime like this back then. How far he was planning it, I don't know. Was there a thought that he was going to plan it? Possibly. I mean, here's the thing. Why in April? Well, in April, we had emails from between him and the Pullman chief police referencing about the intern position there at the Pullman Police Department. He didn't get it. Why didn't he get it? Well, at the time at DeSales, he was in DeSales University, and he was working also as a security guard in the school that he attended before. There's been a resignation letter or information that's been released that indicate that he was forced to resign. That had he not resigned, that he had understood that he could be terminated. So whatever happened there probably affected his background check. And you have to add in the history of heroin abuse. So those two things on their own probably don't equate to a prime candidate for a law enforcement official or a law enforcement position. So him knowing that probably thought to himself that, I'm never going to get a law enforcement job. He can't change what's happened already. It's not like he can go back in time and stop himself from doing heroin or fix whatever it is that he did that got him, forced him to resign. So with that being thought of and that in mind, maybe he did have a little bit of a moment where he snapped or the stick started to crack a little bit. Necessarily not crack all the way or snap, but start to snap. And that started the process. Plus, at the same time, that's when that Reddit survey was out in April of 2022. And that survey being, or I think it was out there in March or February. So it was just out there right before. So he was in contact with people during that time that had committed violent offenses. So there's all those things that are taking place. I'm not necessarily sure that he planned this specific crime against these specific people at that time, but I think that's when the ball started rolling. I'm going to need to know what you're talking about, Paula, a little bit more specific, and I'll help you answer it. They would have taken the dog outside. I'm sure they would have let Murphy sleep in there too. People don't normally leave a dog in another room. I don't know about that. All my dogs sleep in other rooms. It's the only one that sleeps in my room. But that's anecdotal. Either way, that's to me. I know that when I've gone out on multiple occasions, a long time ago, I don't go out anymore. When I've gone out and I've stayed out to the wee hours of the mornings, when I get back home, my dog's asleep. If I took him to go potty at, before I left at 10 o'clock, what's the difference between that, taking a dog out at 10:30 or at 9:30 at night before you go to bed, and then taking the dog out in the morning at, this is a college kid. So, at 10 o'clock in the morning, taking the dog out again. But what's the difference if you go out in between that time? The dog is still going to go out and potty at the same time that it would have. So, me personally, when I get home late, I don't wake my dogs up and say, all right, go pee outside because I'm home late. They stay asleep. Yeah, we're really close to 40K. I'd appreciate that if you guys could help us get there. Check out the 2 a.m. footage. Are you talking about the Linda Lane footage? I already know that. Well, we already know that Kaylee and Maddie were calling Jack DeCourt till about 3 a.m. So anything before then is probably not real or associated. There's a lot of parties and a lot of people that happened in that area, and not just in that direction. It could be in the opposite direction. You know, if you think you can hear a noise 2 blocks east, you know, what makes you think you won't hear a noise 2 blocks west or south or north? So that radius is huge. So just because we hear some noise or whatnot doesn't necessarily mean it's coming from that direction. One example is we know from the probable cause affidavit that a dog is barking at 4:17 a.m. In the Linda Lane footage at 4:17 a.m., there is no barking heard. And if you can, it is so low, it has to be boosted to the max, and you can barely, if you can hear it, barely make it out. So if it's that low during the time that we know it's going on, what makes us think that the louder barking at 4:12 or 4:10 or 4:01 or 4 or 2 or 3 is Murphy? If we can't hear him or vaguely hear him at 4:17, when we know it's him barking, that just leads me to believe that there are other dogs in the area, y'all. How in God's name can these kids fight and scream for their lives and Dylan and Bethany not know something is very wrong? Well, we do know that there's audio from the ring cam 50 feet away from the house, and there's a thud, there's voices whimpering, and dogs barking. There's no screaming, there's no yelling, there's no fighting for lives in the manner that you're alluding. You know, if these folks were intoxicated and asleep when they were attacked, or surprised when they were attacked by a 7.5-inch blade, if that blade goes into somebody's lung, there's no screaming, there's no yelling. There is blood filling up your lung capacity. It's like trying to yell underwater. It's not going to happen. And from my understanding is, it sounds like all of these poor kids took the brunt force of the attack in their chest. So if the lungs are attacked, filling up, you're drowning in your own blood, basically. The fight that you're alluding to is not really there. It just isn't. Did you hear Ethan's best friend at the funeral say Ethan was looking forward to moving back to the frat house? So was he living with the girls? I don't know. I heard rumors of that. I hadn't seen the actual those words. I hadn't heard them myself. I've seen part of the at the funeral or at the vigil that or the celebration of life that they've had. I don't recall that part being said, but I've heard that part was said, like from other creators or people telling me that part was said. If it was, I honestly don't know where he was living or what he was doing. If he was there in that house, it could be. I don't know. It changes everything. What are they hiding? Lose former C attitude and think about things. Well, it's not so much that I'm thinking about things as a former C attitude. I'm trying to look at things from it is a C attitude. It's a common sense attitude. I don't look at things from one perspective or another. I look at things from a whole picture. If somebody tells me that John committed a crime, I'm going to expect to find certain things that would go along with that. Like, for instance, what time did John supposedly commit this crime? If it happened between 2 and 3 p.m., all right, does John work? You can go check his work. If he's at work, then it wasn't him. If he's not at work and he called in sick that day, okay, there's something there. You know, John did this with what? With a handgun. All right, go find out if John owns any handguns. So, you know, I look at things from a whole different perspective. It's not necessarily a cop perspective. It's just in my opinion, a bigger picture. Because, like, for instance, when we're talking about Delphi, and I look at Delphi, for instance, I don't see that case as being an open shut case. I don't see that case as being absolved from corruption. I think it's very plausible in that case. And that's what we're covering. So I keep things 100, my man. I keep it a buck. If it comes out, if it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, I call it a duck. You know what I mean? BK, he looks like what he's accused, in my opinion, based on the evidence that we know. Richard Allen, maybe not so much. I mean, I do think he was involved. He puts himself there, but Elvis Field's comments are, they perking an ear, an eyebrow, whatever you want to call it. They raise suspicion. So it's not so much about, and the other thing is too, whether it was from a cop's perspective or from an ordinary citizen, which I am now, I'm looking at the perspective of the truth, the evidence, accuracy. Appreciate that, Jeff. I'll check that out here in a little bit. She was in frozen shock phrase. How was she texting Bethany for 8 hours? I don't know how she was texting anybody. I don't know if she was texting anybody. I think that was some stuff that has come out, but not has yet to been confirmed. If she had been texting someone, I can't answer for somebody else, my man. I don't know. But what I do know is, like, how does that change the fact that there was a white Elantra without a front license plate driving around suspiciously during the time that it was driving around, Kohberger's phone being off at the time that it was off? I mean, the only thing that we can probably say, if there's any type of suspicion here, is that they were somehow involved or had knowledge or were a party to Bryan Kohberger. And according to Bryan Kohberger, there's no connection to anybody. No victims, no nothing in that house. That's one thing. And two, Bethany and Dylan's phones were both forensically downloaded. So if there was something on there that could point to, anything, they would have found it. It would have been found. So I get it. You're looking at it suspicious. I understand it. I looked at it suspicious too. I still kind of do. I mean, like, well, I don't know what they did, but it doesn't change the fact that these people, these students, their lives were taken by somebody at a specific time. And that evidence points at this guy. Whether he knew Bethany or Dylan or not, doesn't appear so. But I don't know. I agree. He definitely thought 911 was being called on the way out of the house. I agree. I think that's the only reason why Dylan remained alive, for two reasons. One, if Kohberger, and we're assuming it's him, is opening the back sliding glass door only to touch it once, to not close it again, to not touch it again, and his goal is to not leave his DNA behind, so he's going to touch things as little as possible. Given where Dylan's door or bedroom is located, it would be hard to tell going in from the house from the back that wasn't a closet. Now, I know everybody's going to say, oh, he stalked the place. He was out there 12 times. Yeah, but you can't be outside and look through the walls and see where that door is located, right? And if you were to go on Zillow or apartment.com or whatever it was at the time, there wasn't a 3D, map of the house like there was or is now. There was just slides of pictures of what the rooms look like in a bunch of different orders. It was hard to tell which one was in which room, or much less try to make a diagram out of that. So if he's going in there, and this is his first time in that house, and it's at night, he walks through the kitchen, he sees a staircase to his right, sees a living room to his left, and sees a closet door or a door right there. I'm not surprised if he assumed that was a closet and went up the stairs. And if he thinks it's a closet, that's why he doesn't open the door or check it. Because if he's checking the closet door, that's another opportunity for him to leave his DNA behind. So I think those are the two things that kind of saved her, in my opinion. Do you think that BK's childhood medical records will be subpoenaed if it's relevant to his anger behavior? Maybe. I mean, and that's a good question for a lawyer, to be honest with you. He says, trust me, all that will be brought out by Ann Taylor at trial. Have faith. What is she gonna bring out? Like more 1880. Like, I don't know if you guys saw, but I was on Truth and Transparency's channel not too long ago. We're doing a little bit of a debate back and forth. Part 1 was on my channel, part 2 on hers. She had Gabriela Vargas, the defense's own witness, on. Kudos to her, for being able to get her on the show. But I was able to get her to say that the IgG and the STR have nothing to do with each other, meaning that one can't throw out the other. They're not part of the same tree. That people are trying to say that, oh, fruit of the poisonous tree, got to throw that out. It's not the case. It's futile, as the judge already said. But yeah, Lisa, I don't think there's going to be much. In fact, I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's a plea done before anything else. Maybe some chatter I'm hearing. We know Brian bought a K-bar. Oh yeah, I already got that one. Man, these things jump around because I got that one a while ago. Let me scroll down a little bit. Daniel isn't saying BK is guilty. He's saying the evidence collected is damaging. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying 100% that BK is guilty. I don't know all the evidence. There's no way anybody can say that at this point. I think that his phone being off during the time of the murders, the white car outside of the house missing a front license plate like his was during that time, the DNA on a sheath under the body of a victim that belongs to him. All those things add up. And I guess you can kind of explain one or two at a time, right? Oh man, he could have touched something and that's how his DNA got there. Man, there's 22,000, white cars in that area, Elantras or whatnot. It could have been somebody else's. What's the other one? Oh, his phone went out of service. That's why his phone was not connected or it died. But then you have to add all those together. BK went to a garage sale, touched a knife sheath and a knife combo that would eventually be used by the real killer, who just so happens to drive a white Elantra. Or you know what? It's a bad idea to drive your own car, right? So he stole a white Elantra, and nobody's reported that theft yet because they know. I don't know. You guys tell me why that person hasn't reported that theft. So this other person buys this knife sheath, steals a white Elantra, takes off the front license plate so that it looks like Kohberger's. Knows exactly when Bryan Kohberger is going to be driving around by himself at night. Knows exactly when he's going to turn off his phone. Goes and commits the murders before Bryan Kohberger turns on his phone. And knows exactly that Kohberger is going to turn on his phone just south of Moscow so that it appears and it looks like that he's coming from that area because he's traveling in the opposite direction when his phone turns on. Now, I don't know who this guy is, but man, he's good. It's real good. BK has been fired from all his jobs. That is, from what I understand, somewhat accurate. I mean, I know one of them he resigned, but that was because he was being forced to resign. He was forced to leave the law enforcement class back in high school and put in an HVAC class where there wasn't any females. And that was one of the big, I think, reasons why he was put in there. Makes me wonder what he was doing in his law enforcement class that got him taken out, and put into a class where there's no women or females or girls. Then he got fired from was relieved of duty of his fish frying cutting job because he wasn't personable. Then he becomes a security guard at the school that, basically told him he couldn't be in the law enforcement class because he had a problem with something. They hired him, probably because his parents have ties to the school, I believe. And he's forced to resign there. He does do well at the sales, but where he does well / where the professor had basically said, that he was brilliant and that they recommended him for the PhD class. Well, that portion of his class was done online. So it was never in person per the professor. So, I wonder why. And then he gets to Pullman, and in Pullman, he is fired pretty fast from his teaching assistant position. I mean, really, really fast. And which reminds me, and I'm glad you guys brought this up. I had brought this up, and someone in the live chat or somebody in the comment section had said, WSU has remained silent on that as far as his termination, that I am saying unconfirmed things. And then in the next sentence tells me that the very next sentence of the same comment tells me that Bryan Kohberger apparently frowned at a LBGTQ something on campus, and that because his frowning led campus officials, students to think that, he was right-winged. And because of that, they decided to have him fired by making these claims against him from PhD students and all these other claims from Professor Snyder that are outlandish. And I was astounded that my information was not credible because it came from the words of a PhD student. But the frowning of Bryan Kohberger was extremely credible, and that's the whole reason why he was being fired. I can't make this shit up, y'all. I mean, excuse my language, but this is true. And I'm not trying to point out anybody or pull, do any of those things. Everybody has a right to their own opinion and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, we can't use a double standard on one and not the other. We can't say, hey, you can't say that because that's unconfirmed and then spew unconfirmed stuff behind it. Doesn't make sense. But that's all I got for you guys today. I want to thank everybody that has commented, the whole 9 yards, commented, subscribed, liked. I appreciate it. And like I said multiple times, there's nothing wrong with having a difference of opinion. I like folks that have a different of opinion to bring out their questions because, one, it makes me think and makes me think that, it helps me strengthen one way or the other what I'm thinking. If there's something that's wrong, in my thought process, and somebody found something that says something different to what I say, I want to see it. I want to be accurate. I want to put out accurate information. And, and it's happened on more than one occasion, believe me, where I've said something or I've read something and it wasn't, maybe, let me put it this way, where I speculated on something and somebody sent me, documentation. Well, we'll put it this way. Somebody had told me about Xana Kernodle's mom putting out on Facebook that there was a fight between Loach and this, that, and the third. I didn't believe it. I couldn't find a post. A lot of people sent me that. And sure enough, it's true. Okay. All right. Well, let me put that into my notes that did happen. And we'll have to look at that case or look at that situation as being true. Just like I didn't believe that somebody saw the killer in the house 8 hours before they called 911. I thought that was ludicrous too. I get it, guys. I really do. But I also see all the evidence that points at BK. And I just think they got their guy. But I appreciate everybody. Thank you guys. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. We'll be back. I'll probably be back tomorrow. I'll do another one. See y'all then. Oh, wait. Whoa. I almost missed something. Thank you, Karen, for your $50 super chat. She says, do you know what I like about you in this case? You are on it. The truth is hard to accept. I appreciate you, Karen. Thank you so much. And thank you for your generous donation. I appreciate that. And then we have a $4.99 super sticker from Nolo. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate all of you guys. Y'all have a fantastic weekend and be safe. Peace out.